Raider Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and I was laying in bed last night. I know, relax a little bit. And I was sitting back thinking to myself, are the Raiders planning on making a big move? And the more and more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know, they kind of did some stuff today. When I say today, the Raiders 53-man roster, that made me believe that they could be planning on making a big move. So coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why I think that the Raiders are at least planning on bringing in a player or two that would make this 53-man roster. Now, we're 489 subscribers away from 199,000, and we've had so many people over the past 48, 72 hours been tuning in. Tons of new subscribers. If you're looking for free Raiders videos every single day, if your voice sounds like me from just talking about the Raiders over the past 48 hours, I want you to hit that subscribe button. I want you to turn on those notifications. So the first reason here why I believe that the Raiders are at least planning on making a move or at least planning on adding a player or two to that 53-man roster, I want you to look at that 53-man. And when you dissect the 53-man, the first thing that really stuck out to me was the Raiders keeping Aidan O'Connell and them keeping Thomas Harper. I know it really hasn't been reported as much around Harper as it has AOC, but AOC is dealing with a fractured wrist. That's a 6 to 8 week injury, and that is a player that I anticipate they end up putting on that short-term IR. There's a brand new rule in the NFL where they're going to be out the first 4 weeks of the season, and then they have to come back by that 5th week. If they're unable, then they get put on IR for the rest of the season. Because of the Thomas Harper injury, he sustained it in the first preseason game, played only one snap, ended up coming out, and we really haven't heard too much about it. But based on some of the information that I've been given, I was under the impression that Aidan O'Connell would be placed on short-term IR, just like Lonnie Johnson Jr., also like Thomas Harper. So to me, if it's odd to me that the Raiders would keep two injured players on their active roster, but maybe they did it because they're planning something. Are they looking at two potential players, whether it be via trade, whether it be via free agency? Also, at the end of today's show, I'm going to tell you some waiver wire claims that I want the Raiders to target because literally there's 1 hour and then the Raiders are going to put in some claims. So the fact that the Raiders want to add two players that are good enough to make this 53, that is something that I believe. Because Aidan O'Connell, he could be traded or he could be kept when he returns. I personally could see both of those options. I could also say that the Raiders, from a Thomas Harper standpoint, they could move him on. They could also move another player away on the bottom of the roster, maybe like a Will Putnam because they kept 10 offensive linemen. But with the fact that they do expect Lonnie Johnson Jr. to come back, and I expect Johnson to come back, what does that mean for a Chris Smith? Do they end up keeping him? The Raiders decided to move on from Terrell Edmonds. So when you just paint the picture of all the things that the Raiders have done, I sit back and I go, I still think that they're planning on making a big move. Now, some of you would go, well, Mitch, why wouldn't they just decide to put Aidan on short term, put Thomas Harper on short term, and then just keep two players that, you know, are going to end up hitting that waiver wire? They're going to end up hitting the open market. Maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, but you know what? That's my job here. I try to create content for you guys, and I'm a sicko where I was literally laying in bed last night at midnight. I couldn't go to sleep, and I was like, I want to talk about this with the nation. I believe that the Raiders are a respectful franchise. You could say what you want about it. Mark Davis is an outstanding human being. He might not be the best, owner overall for wins, but I know he's a really good human being. I also know that Pete Carroll's a well-liked man. I know that John Spytek is a very good human being. So instead of keeping two players that you were going to cut, LV, I think, just ended up keeping O'Connell, and I believe that they ended up keeping Harper. So the cut players, they would have missed the waiver wire. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, the Raiders keep a Trey Taylor, and the Raiders end up keeping Amari Gaynor. And you keep them on your team, but then 2 or 3 days later, you end up cutting them because you want to try to bring in two guys. For Amari Gaynor and Trey Taylor, for example, they would have missed the waiver wire. For young players like that, that is their opportunity to get on another team, to get on another practice squad, to fulfill that dream. And I think that the Raiders have way too much respect for how hard they were asking a lot of these guys to practice to do that to some of the dudes. So what they did, they kept two players that have a legit shot to make this team when they end up coming back from the 4-week injury. So before I get down and tell y'all what I think that these moves could potentially be, there's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. If the Raiders end up making a big move, what are you hoping it's going to be? There's somebody on the thumbnail of this video is where my answer is going to end up being. And if that's the guy they bring in, I hope y'all are ready to silver and black out. Seriously, that ad break's going to happen. Go down to the comments, answer this question. If the answer's not Justin Simmons, I feel like it's got to be almost just about anything that could potentially help us in the secondary. When you look at that 53 man, you better feel pretty damn confident that I think we have a legit offense. I think we have a legit top 10 offense in the NFL. The defense, though, oh, man, there's going to be some high-scoring games at Allegiant Stadium this season that I can guarantee you. So what exactly could this big move end up being? Could the Raiders potentially look at a quarterback? I know I wasn't the only one that was surprised when the Raiders decided to move off from the 6th-round pick Cam Miller, and as it stands right now, you have 3 QBs. I think because the Raiders knew that they were going to move on from Cam Miller, they potentially went out and overspent a little bit on Kenny Pickett. But the overspend of Kenny Pickett, they did that because they wanted a better quarterback than Aidan O'Connell. Were they planning this move all along back when the Kenny Pickett was traded? I think there's a possibility. So to me, you're not going to add somebody that's better than Geno. You're not going to add somebody that's better than Kenny Pickett. What you're trying to do is add a potential quarterback 3 option. And some of you might go, well, this isn't a big move. I'm going to be honest. I don't totally disagree that this wouldn't be the big move, but I'm at least throwing the idea out there that the Raiders could do it. And a lot of the names on here, you can point your finger at a bunch of them. I'll continuously say DTR is an interesting option. John Wolford, Kyle Trask. I'll also throw out some other names like a Taylor Heineke, a Brett Rippon, a Hendon Hooker, Tyler Huntley. These are some potential quarterback 3 options that the Raiders could look at. But you know what? Nobody, I think, really gives a shit whether or not the Raiders add a QB3. And I do sit back and I go, can it be a safety? And if it ends up being a free safety, we're going to get freaking wild on this show. Thomas Harper, again, I think he's likely to go to short-term IR. Lonnie Johnson Jr. is already on IR. The Raiders cut Terrell Edmonds, and that was a player that, had a lot of people, myself included, I thought would make the 53-man, was getting first-team reps, kind of replaced Lonnie Johnson Jr. in the preseason with that big nickel, and you can argue it if you want. You can argue free safety, you can argue corner, but I would say if you were to ask 100 out of 100 Raiders fans, what's your biggest concern? Everybody's going to go in the secondary route. So if you're looking at some potential safety options, I think Justin Simmons is the clear-cut number 1 name. I'll also say watch out for John Johnson. He's a good center fielder. Marcus Epps was asked to be released by the New England Patriots the other day. Mike Edwards has spent some time in the AFC West. Jalen Mills has some connections to Brandon Hunt and to Anthony Patchen and Jordan Whitehead. He has his connections as well to John Spytek. In terms of a trade candidate, the name I'll throw out there is Kyle Duggar. And, I've started to reach around the NFL. That sounds weird. I've started to reach the people around the NFL and, ask what they think about Duggar. They like some of his intangibles. It seems like maybe he has fallen out of favor a little bit in New England, but trading Jacoby Myers for Kyle Duggar straight up, again, I'll keep saying it, it's Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis type bat in terms of a trade value, but this young man does have value, and if you go out and you trade for him, it's basically a 1-year prove-it deal because in 2026 and 2027, he's got $0 million guaranteed. I do think that the Raiders could be interested in him, but I'm not giving up Jacoby. I talked to our Patriots guy today at Chat Sports. His name is Brett Alper, and I said, what are you looking for? And Chokes can back me up. I said, we'll give you a 7th. He's like, that probably would get the deal done. 7th-round pick for Kyle Duggar. I am interested in that. Let's go to the next position here, and we're going to be looking at the cornerbacks. We need help at corner. Before I break down why I think corner is a need, and before I break down which corners I'm going to be looking at, I got to give a shout-out to our sponsor here today, Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is back because football is so flipping back. And I can't wait to watch a lot of college football this weekend. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks puts theirs member first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. If you want to roll with my lineup, you can go with Dak Prescott. They're giving you a freebie, half a passing yard. Take the more on that. The season long for Brock Bowers, I like the more for 5 touchdowns. I'm also going to go more Geno Smith, 3,600 passing yards. More Jacoby Myers, 70.5 receptions. Yes, the addition of Amari Cooper makes this one a little bit more nervous for me, but going less with Jack Besh, I feel very, very confident on it. So if you're trying to roll with my lineup, download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game, and I hope you run your game all season long with us. That link is going to be down in the comments. It's going to be down in the description of today's show. All right, let's go to the cornerback room now and hit the like button if you want the Raiders to add a corner or if you're concerned about the secondary. If this video doesn't get 30,000 likes, I don't know what the hell we're doing. But cornerback is a major need for this team. Thomas Harper also does play a little bit of the nickel cornerback game. So for the Raiders, if one of their thought processes was, well, if we keep Harper, he can help us out at safety, he can help us out at nickel, could you potentially look for a player that helps do both of those things if he is unable to return to your lineup after being on that short-term IR? Darian Porter, he has also really struggled this preseason. The fact that Eric Stokes is our cornerback one, I'll say it the way that I said last year when I was talking about our running back room. Eric Stokes being your cornerback one is like Zamir White being your running back one. You can tell me you're confident in it all you want, but look at me dead in the eyes and say that you're not a little bit nervous about this cornerback room. Yes, there's some upside. Yes, Pete Carroll is a cornerback whisperer, but somebody might need to yell in Pete Carroll's ear and tell him, hey, this cornerback room ain't good enough. And Stephon Gilmore is a player that I would target. He's the top guy I would look at. Mike Hilton, not an outside guy, a nickel, did end up getting released by the Miami Dolphins, but it sounds like it was a bad relationship there. I don't really think Trey Flowers, Troy Hill, or Kendall Fuller are all that good, but due to their connections with Spytek and some of the other people on this regime, that's why their names are thrown in there. From a trade standpoint, I got asked this the other day, who do you think is the top player the Raiders to trade for at the cornerback position? I'm going to go with Jamel Dean, and it's because of what other moves Tampa Bay has made this offseason, and it's because of that connection with John Spytek. Yes, it's going to cost you like $15 million, and if anybody wants more information on why this move could happen, I did a video on it a few months ago. If you look up Jamel Dean Raiders Report on YouTube, you'll see it. It's a picture of Spytek. I actually think it's one of my cooler thumbnails that I've ever made. Another person, Greg Newsome. The Cleveland Browns know that they're not going to be a good football team this season, and they're trying to build for the future. Newsome's in that fifth-year option. I don't think it would cost a lot, and because I don't think it would cost a lot, that tells me that the Raiders would at least be a little bit interested. But again, you got to go out and pay him $11 million. To me, I don't see why you can't at least pick up the phone and give Stephon Gilmore a call. Let's go to the next position here in terms of big move targets. I'm going to look at defensive end, and the reason why I am mentioning these positions, it's because quarterback, Aidan O'Connell, right safety, corner, that's Thomas Harper. Defensive end now is where we're going, and some of you might be going, well, Mitch, why is it defensive end? The reason why we're talking about defensive end is because Charles Snowden is at some point this season more than likely going to get suspended, and maybe they hold it off until next season when that suspension comes for that DUI, but I do anticipate it ends up happening. So if the Raiders know that this suspension is going to happen, I think it makes sense to why you would keep an AOC of Thomas Harper in preparation that you're going to go out and add another defensive end. We also know that Tyree Wilson's been looking a lot better at DT, and if your only DEs are Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz, Tyree Wilson, and Charles Snowden, and if Snowden ends up getting suspended and Tyree Wilson's playing defensive tackle, we clearly just need more bodies at DE. So to me, the options that I'm looking at here, Jadeveon Clowney's the number one. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that Clowney hasn't been in more conversations in regards to the Las Vegas Raiders. Zadarius Smith is looking for an option. I don't really think it's going to be the Raiders, but if I didn't put him on this list, I'd be mad at myself. Shaq Barrett with his connections to Spytek. Preston Smith is 32 years old, but still playing at a decent enough level. And we seem like we're bringing the band back together with Amari Cooper. So I said, you know what? Let's throw Cleveland Furl just for the hell of it. Let's go to the last position here. And I also understand that offensive line could be a position to talk about. I just don't think that they're going to go out and get a big name. We'll talk about an offensive lineman that I want the Raiders to target on the waiver wire. But defensive tackle. We all anticipated Christian Wilkins would help us out this season. The Raiders have used a lot of fronts this season already in the preseason where they've rolled out 3 defensive tackles. Yes, they have a lot of good solid, shouldn't say a lot of solid depth. They have depth at DT, and I think it's, an okay unit overall, but I am worried about the longevity of a football season, and trying to replace Wilkins is not going to happen. And I fully understand that. And when you see the names that I'm about to bring up here, they're not really names that I really think are going to be able to help you replace Christian Wilkins. It's more of these are just extra names if you're looking for extra depth on that defensive line. Maybe you feel like one of these players is an upgrade over, I don't know, Leki Fotu. Maybe you feel like they're an upgrade over somebody along the lines of a Jonnu Lalu. To me personally, I do not think that, but I had to put defensive tackle in this show because we were anticipating of having Wilkins, and the whole idea of making a big move is to help you replace something that you lost. So coming up next here, I want to look at some potential waiver claims for the Raiders, and I hope I don't miss any names. There's a lot of names to throw out there. I'm sure some people are going to ask me about Hunter Renfrow today. Hunter Renfrow, I don't see why the Raiders would. You already have a receiver in Amari Cooper that's not going to block for you. That's maybe not going to give you any special teams reps. That's not going to give you the most physicality. But from waiver wire, there's a lot of good players. And to me, the very first name I'm going to bring up is if I was sitting in a room with Pete and John, the very first name I put up is who I want the Raiders to claim today. So before I break all that down, you're about to get in with another YouTube ad break. Scroll on down, answer this question. Who's the player you're hoping the Raiders claim off waivers? My answer is going to be Juju Brents, and he was a cornerback from K-State. He's long, he's lanky, played a little bit in the nickel, played a little bit on the outside. 6'3", 200 pounds. That is the definition of what Pete Carroll looks for at corner. At corner in the secondary. I should also mention, waiver claims are due at noon Eastern time. The Raiders are picking 6th on the waiver. It's kind of just like the NFL draft. If they put a waiver claim in, if the first 5 teams, think about the NFL draft, if those first 5 teams don't claim them, then the Raiders end up getting them. If I got my number 1 claim, I'm putting it in for Juju Brents. Let's go to another name here. He's a nickel corner, Beanie Bishop Jr. And you're going to look at the numbers and go, holy shit, 4 interceptions, 7 PBUs. I will say I think at times he was picked on a little bit last season. He was targeted often, but I believe that happened because of the other options around him in that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I know that we need a nickel, and to me, he is a feisty player. He's a good player to keep your eye on because I can make an argument that he's better than Darnay Holmes. And if you can at least make that argument, you at least have to entertain the idea. I can't always pronounce this name, but I hit up Tom, and I said, what do you think about Israel Mukwamu? And he's 6'4", 205-pound safety, but he's a versatile safety that the Cowboys used to use at times as a big nickel. And as soon as I end up hearing that, I go, all right, well, that's kind of how the Raiders have been using some of these safety options. He's looked good from time to time. Physical, good athlete overall, 6'4", 205 pounds. But because he offers you that nickel corner safety hybrid mixture, that could be a player that the Raiders are interested in because they moved on from a dude like Terrell Edmunds. Let's go to another name here, Trey Palmer. I know the Raiders have been looking at the wide receiver market. I think that they're pretty confident right now in their wide receiver room, but obviously there's rumors looming right now with Jacoby Myers. He was at practice yesterday. He seemed like he was happy. I know I said earlier in the week that I was told by a source that there were some people in that Raiders organization, player included, that wasn't happy about how the whole Jacoby and Amari Cooper situation went down. That's a cold, hard fact. I'm just telling you how it is. But I also do know that based on the information that I got from practice yesterday, Amari was very, very well received in that locker room. He was very well received by the staff, and Amari looked very happy and motivated to be there. If there is legitimate concern about Jacoby, Trey Palmer is going to be a name I'll throw out there because of his ties to John Spytek down in Tampa Bay. And this is somebody that, is better than an Alex Bachman. This is somebody that would have been probably our number 5 wide receiver, and that's okay. And I think right now, because we have 5 receivers, don't know if we're going to go on that at 6, but if they are concerned about Jacoby, Trey Palmer's a name I'll keep in mind. Let's go to another name here, big boy on the interior, Shy Tuttle, 6'3", 300-pounder. When you take a player like Tuttle and you give him to Rob Leonard, I think Rob Leonard uses his God-given abilities to make big-time defensive linemen, and he turns them into much better players. He is a humongous dude on the interior, and he's going to be able to help out at defense. And because this team needs and wants extra depth overall, Shy Tuttle is going to be a name I throw out there. Isaiah Foskey, a former high draft pick out of Notre Dame, 16 tackles last season, 6'5", 270. Maybe this is one of your Charles Snowden replacements. This could be an extra body that you add to that defensive end room that helps Tyree Wilson kick it in inside. And then the last name I'm going to go with here is Esopole, UDFA by the Chiefs. I actually thought he played pretty well this preseason when he had some opportunities out of Washington State. But to me, he's better than Thayer Munford. And right now the Raiders need an extra offensive tackle because Charles Grant's not ready to go. Caleb Rogers is on the interior. Will Putnam's on the interior. Caleb Rogers is on the interior. So if something were to happen to DJ Glazer, Colton Miller, you're asking Thayer Munford and Charles Grant to go out there. That's a problem. Esopole, to me, at this current moment, is more ready than both of those players. For that reason, that is why I would show interest. Also, he played for the Chiefs, and if I can get a little bit of an inside scoop on Kansas City, I'm always down to do it. Now, I appreciate each and every one of y'all that tune in to today's show. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. And if you haven't already, give me a follow on social media. Today's a good day to do it because if the Raiders are making claims, I'm going to be pumping out tons and tons of content. If the Raiders do make a claim, I'm going to get you guys a video. So stay tuned because it's about to go down here in about 30 minutes.